We have to either believe that being fat is beautiful or just embrace being ugly.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Katie, and for those of you who don't know me, I used to weigh 360 pounds and I've lost 180 pounds and kept it off for years now. And on this channel we will discuss weight loss, weight maintenance, nonsense I see online about body positivity and fat acceptance, my experiences with all of that, and well, anything else I feel like talking about. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and let's get into today's video. So today I have a TikTok from our friend to the channel, More Than Tracy T. And as she described in her TikTok, she said we have a choice between being ugly or being hungry. So I figured we can watch this together and I'll give you my reaction along the way.
I just so deeply connected with every word of this comment that I have to break it down and talk to you, girl, because I feel you so deeply.
Okay, so let's go ahead and read that comment. It says, I just look ugly when I am heavier. I don't know what to do to change that, but losing weight is so hard and I am entirely unable to just live life hungry to lose weight. So, okay, let's see what she has to say about that.
First of all, you just look ugly when you're heavier. Have you considered that maybe growing up, all you saw of being heavier was that it was ugly, and so now those two things are inextricably linked in your mind?
Okay, so clearly I've got some before pictures, so why don't we go ahead and take a look at some of those? And I'm not even going to focus on the body, but let's go ahead and take a look at the face. One thing that always shocks me every time I see any of my pictures from when I was at my heaviest is how drastically different my face looks. I mean, I knew that losing weight would change my appearance, but I had no clue the difference it truly would make until I went through it. And I wasn't the only one who noticed a massive difference in my face. There were a lot of people that I knew that maybe had known me at my heaviest or a heavier weight. And then when they'd seen me after I'd lost the weight, or they run into me now, the look of shock on their face when they see me, or the number of people that just don't even recognize me. I ran into an old poker buddy of mine at one of my previous jobs. So this was about 6-7 years ago now, I'm going to say. And it had been about 10 years since I had seen him. So he knew me at my heaviest. Now, just for reference, this was a man that I played poker with 4 to 5 nights per week, minimum. There were some weeks I maybe played 6 or 7 nights. And there was at least one night where he hosted a home game at his house. I spent many a 4th of July celebrating on his property. And oh yeah, he definitely did not recognize me. Not even the least little bit. I rang him all out. He came in at like 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday, got his coffee, got his newspaper, and I'm just waiting to see if he recognizes me because I recognized him the moment he walked in the door. And I give him his change and he still doesn't recognize me. So I call him by name and the look of shock on his face, like literally all the color drained out of his face. And I mean, I get it. He had not had his coffee yet. But that was clearly a man who did not expect me to look like that at all. Because my looks did change that drastically. Because a man that I had played poker with 4 to 5 nights per week, every week for multiple years, didn't even recognize me. So changes in your weight really can make a difference in your overall appearance. The one thing I always notice anytime I look at any of these before pictures is the difference in the size of my eyes. Now, I know the size of my eyeballs did not change, but what I mean is what is actually visible. So growing up, one of the many nicknames that my dad had given me was doe eyes. For reasons, clearly. And whenever I see myself at my heaviest, I'm always blown away at how little you can actually see them. They're still the same eyes, but now you can see them. And I get it, even if I smile the same way, the difference is palpable. And that's just in my eyes, let alone everything else in my face, let alone obviously my body. So yeah, it really does make a difference on your appearance. And whether or not you consider that to be attractive or ugly, that's going to be a subjective thing based off the person. But at least personally, I much prefer my looks now than I ever did at my heaviest.
That's how it is for me. So I feel ya. Yes, it feels impossible to change because that's all we've ever known or seen, pretty much.
And I'd like to point out that the same thing could be said if you haven't lost weight successfully. You're going to come at it with a whole bunch of fear or maybe misinformation because you haven't actually experienced it.
And I completely feel you about being unable to live life hungry to lose weight.
Yeah, me too. I didn't walk around hungry to lose weight. Not even a little bit. I mean, I'd get hungry and then I would eat, but it wasn't like I walked around hungry all the time. Not even close. As a matter of fact, I had walked around so full for so long at my heaviest to where I was just going from binge to binge to binge that I actually had to kind of take a moment and understand what hunger actually felt like. I assumed that not being full was hungry. But there's a huge difference between being full and being hungry. And there's a whole lot of space in the middle where you're not full or not hungry, where you might not need to eat right now, but maybe you're going to start needing to think about food in an hour or two. But there's a large difference between being full and being hungry. And because I had been so full for so long, and that became such a familiar feeling for me, that hunger was something I didn't really experience when I was at my heaviest. It was just more habitual and routine or emotional. Not, oh, I'm hungry and I need to eat. More, oh, I haven't eaten for a couple of hours. I should probably eat. Ooh, this sounds good. I should probably eat. Because it had been so long since I had been properly hungry in that fashion. And then the other thing I want to point out is a slight caloric deficit is not going to leave you feeling hungry. I was able to go into a slight caloric deficit by simply leaving a bite or two of food on my plate at every meal. And that would add up to that 100 to 200 calorie deficit that I tried to stay in when I was losing weight. So no, leaving a bite or two of food on my plate definitely didn't leave me hungry. Not even close.
First of all, I tried that for a long time. It didn't work. It made me extremely miserable to be around, obsessed with food in a way that I'm really not when I'm eating enough.
Okay, eating enough. So it almost sounds to me like she went on a very restrictive plan, that she went way the other way. And I get it. A lot of people love to do this. You want the results now. You want it to go quickly. Or you've made up your mind and you're just ready to go all in right now. I definitely have done that plenty of times. And that's when I failed. Big time. Because I wasn't ready for those big changes. Most people aren't. These are things that are going to take a long time to change your habits on for most of us. I know that there are those stories of people that go out there and say, hey, I cleaned out all the junk food from my pantry, from my fridge. I stopped going to this restaurant overnight. I did all of these things and now here I am. But I got to say personally, that never worked. And if you're becoming obsessive over food, then perhaps you are restricting too much. Either that or you might not be eating the right foods. And this is something I definitely noticed over the years with trial and error. If, say, for example, I'm eating nothing but processed carbs, a whole bunch of junk food, I could eat a bunch of candy bars, I could eat a whole bunch of chips and wash it all down with a whole bunch of pop. And within an hour or two, I will be ravenous again because all of that food that I just ate, no matter how many calories were in it, there is barely any nutrition to be found in any of that. And then if I were to take that same amount of calories worth of junk food and instead eat, I don't know, steak and a baked potato and some vegetables, yeah, I'm going to be full for hours and hours. And I'm definitely not going to get mad or hangry or obsessed if I've just had a big old steak and a baked potato. Not even close. I'm going to be satisfied off of that for a very long time. So it sounds to me like weight loss isn't necessarily the problem, but perhaps the way that she went about it.
It made me extremely, distracted, brain foggy, dizzy all the time, all of that stuff.
Okay, wow. So yeah, I'm definitely not a doctor, and this is not medical advice by any stretch. But personally, based off of things that I've gone through and I can relate with, that sounds like blood sugar issues, where if you eat too many carbs or too many processed carbs and you're not getting enough protein within your meals, you're going to have that blood sugar spike. And then what happens after it spikes? You get the crash. And when it crashes, that's when you go hypoglycemic. And then, yeah, you'll get dizzy, you'll feel shaky, you can get very irritable, you won't know really what's going on. Yeah, I've had some of that, and it's not fun. But I also know that the way that I eat plays a massive role in that. If I'm going to eat nothing but junk food all day that's going to constantly cause those blood sugar spikes, I can expect to constantly feel those blood sugar crashes as well. But again, if I eat a lot more protein and way less of those carbs, I'm not going to have that issue. And again, I'm no doctor, but if I had those issues going on, I'd definitely go talk to one instead of just throwing my hands up and going, oh, I guess weight loss isn't for me.
I just couldn't function well when I wasn't eating enough to try to lose weight. And if you are trying to lose weight by not eating enough, then eventually it's going to bounce back because your body does adjust your metabolism to fight that weight loss because it thinks you're starving because it just doesn't know any better. You can't.
Okay, wow, she is conflating a lot of things there. So let's break all of that down. First off, when does the bounce back happen? I've kept this weight off for 7, nearly 8 years now. And I mean, I gotta say, I had a couple of kids in the middle of losing all this weight too. So when does that start? Genuinely curious. Because she acts like people haven't lost weight and kept it off. I know I'm not the only one who has. Not even close. There's been a lot of us who have lost weight and kept it off. Because in reality, for the vast majority of people who do regain weight after losing weight, it's because they've returned to their old habits. They didn't keep up with what they did to lose the weight. Either they went into a program that was unsustainable for them, or they got to their goal and then they started slipping up a little bit. And then you start slipping up a little bit more and a little bit more. And it starts with, well, I'm going to have a treat. Well, I'm going to have another treat. Well, it's so-and-so's birthday. It's Flag Day. It's Friday. It's cheat day. It's always an occasion to celebrate if you wish it to be, right? So that's kind of how I see it happen for a lot of people. So when does it bounce back? I'm genuinely curious. And if you do try to lose weight by going into a caloric deficit, she claims that your body is going to eventually fight back and throw off your metabolism because it thinks it's starving. Oh boy, a lot to break down in that too. So first off, starvation mode, which is what she is basically intimating at, it's a total myth. I actually have a whole video where I break it down, and I'll go ahead and link that down below in the comments. Yeah, it's a total myth. That is not how any of that works. Now, there is metabolic adaptation, and that is something completely different than what she's trying to claim here, that your body's going to think it's starving. So basically what metabolic adaptation means is that as you lose weight, your caloric needs are going to drop. So for example, when I was at 360 pounds, my body took substantially more calories just to exist on a day-to-day basis. My needs at 360 pounds were much higher than they are now at 180 pounds. And it works in reverse as well. So when you're a kid, as you're growing, the bigger you get, the more calories you're going to require. And that's something I can see very easily in my children. They're 8 and 9 now, and they grow like weeds. But they eat substantially more now than they did when they were, say, 3 or 4, when they were much shorter and weighed a lot less than they do now. So it works both ways. When you're a kid and you're growing and you're getting taller and bigger, you're going to need a lot more calories than when you were smaller. And when you're losing weight, you'll eventually need less calories than when you were at a heavier weight. That's just all that means. It doesn't mean that your body is fighting you because it thinks it's starving. It's adapting to what you're doing to it. That's all it is. And I gotta admit, every time I hear starvation or starvation mode be brought up by this community, it really rubs me the wrong way. They're acting like starvation itself doesn't exist. That there are people going to bed hungry in our own communities, let alone all around the world. I looked it up right before filming. There's still 25,000 people per day in this world that are dying from starvation. And they have the gall, they have the audacity to sit here and say, if you eat just a little less, your body's going to think it's starving. No, there are literally people actually suffering from starvation right now. And they are not in just a slight caloric deficit. There is a huge difference between I didn't eat everything I wanted to today versus I haven't been able to eat in days. There is a massive difference. So when this community wants to conflate a slight caloric deficit to literal starvation, it honestly really pisses me off because it just shows how little empathy they actually have for the people who are suffering from that right now, as well as the notion that they believe that they are on that level. just because maybe they didn't eat everything they wanted to that day. Yeah, that's just wow.
You can't go talk to your body and say, hey, body, I know you're concerned for me, but listen, I really need to lose weight to be a healthy BMI like my doctor said. Your body's going to be like, bitch, you're starving. I'm going to do whatever I can to keep you alive. It doesn't know.
Okay, I'm certain if I would have talked to my body at 360 pounds, because yes, I'm sure we can all dissociate from our body and talk to it as it's a separate entity and not just part of who we are, right? But I'm certain if I would have talked to my 360 pound body, it would have very easily told me, bitch, you better lose the weight or you're probably not going to see 40. I mean, not to be morbid here, but that's the reality of things. If I could have talked to my body, it would have begged me to take better care of it than I was at that time.
Having lived life hungry, having lived life restricting, having lived life purity testing all foods, I would not wish that on any single person. And I know a lot of people wish it on me. Increasingly, I'm seeing people expect that they should be hungry all the time. I just got a comment from someone being like, being hungry is not a bad thing. You should be hungry. I'm hungry. I get hungry 3 times a day and then I eat a meal and then I'm not hungry and then I get hungry again later and then, you know what I mean? They're saying don't eat when you're hungry, just be hungry all the time. No. I have to write a dissertation. My dissertation's due in like 5 weeks. If I don't eat, that ain't happening. You know, it's not viable. And I'm really glad you know that.
And again, a slight caloric deficit is not starvation. I certainly didn't starve myself for 7 years to lose weight, especially because I had 2 kids back to back right in the middle of that. My kids are like 13 months apart. So I actually had to put all that on hold, clearly, while I was pregnant. And yeah, I never starved myself in the 5.5 years that I was actively losing weight. But I'm glad to see that she thinks she has weight loss figured out, especially since she admits she was not successful at it. I mean, it's not like there's people here who have lost weight and kept it off that we could, I don't know, ask how they did it, take advice from them. I don't know, maybe listen to the words they're saying as opposed to somebody who was unsuccessful at this thing. And this is the thing that always blows my mind with body positivity and fat acceptance, that any of them feel qualified in any capacity to talk about dieting, weight loss, any of this, if they've never been successful at it. I mean, I can listen and understand what not to do, but I'm not going to listen and go, wow, this is the blueprint that I must follow.
So I think the only choice about feeling ugly when you're heavier is to just embrace being ugly. Like, I think that's all there is. If being heavier is being ugly, fucking embrace it. And like, yes, of course, do things for your health, whatever. But if they don't result in you being skinny, then it is what it is.
Wow, okay, so she actually did talk about health, but according to her, it just is what it is, or whatever. Such a defeatist attitude from my perspective, quite frankly. It's clear that she truly believes that you can't make positive changes to your life that are actually going to result in weight loss. And it's very clear to me with her choice of wording how she actually feels about all this. It feels so defeatist. Like, why even bother? Why even try? You might as well just embrace being fat and ugly, right? Really? Now imagine if she kept that same attitude and just flipped some things around and said, well, I'm going to focus on my health and who cares if other people find me attractive? I mean, she could have that same attitude and apply it towards something positive if she wished. But she's taking that attitude and being a total defeatist. If you try to lose weight, you're starving yourself. Eventually, you're going to bounce back and you're going to walk around hungry all the time and never eat again.
I am so ready to reclaim being ugly. If being fat is being ugly, I'm ugly. I'm always going to be ugly. And I've basically always been ugly.
Wow, and I called it. There is that defeatist attitude. I'm never going to lose weight, so why even bother, right? And I've been there. There were plenty of times before I started losing weight that I never thought that I'd be where I am now. That I never thought that I would not only do it, but see it all the way through to the other side and keep it off. There was no shot in hell that I thought I was going to do that. And because I didn't think I could do it, I didn't even try. But once I realized I owed it to myself to try, and it didn't matter what my results were, I was going to try, the results came along, and I realized that my attitude played a huge role in it that whole time, that I was standing in my own way for a good portion of it. And I gotta be honest, that's one thing that I do kind of kick myself still to this day about is, man, what would my life have been like if I hadn't allowed myself to get to that point? But on that, I can say it is what it is because I can't go back in time. All I can do is try to move forward and know that I don't have to think like that anymore.
And we should stop acting like ugly is the worst thing a person can be, because it's not. And I can name a lot of really attractive people who are horrible. I could say horrible things about them. And I could name a lot of really good people who aren't attractive. But that doesn't have any, bearing on their other good qualities.
Okay, but notice she's never talking about health or the effects of obesity on your body. I get it. You can be an absolutely lovely, wonderful person and have nothing to do with your appearance. You can be a gorgeous individual and be a terrible person on the inside. Those things can definitely be true. Absolutely. But you notice she never talks about health. And health is the number one reason why people do choose to lose weight. And yeah, you can lose weight for any number of reasons. If you choose it because you want to look better, or because you want to feel better, or because you're worried about your health, or whatever the case may be. As long as you have weight to lose and you wish to lose it, go for it. But that's not anything she ever talks about. She never addresses the health aspect of it. What being obese, or in my case, what super morbid obesity was doing to my body. I was having trouble breathing. I couldn't tie my own shoes. I was having trouble getting in and out of my car and fitting behind the steering wheel. I was having trouble walking around without getting out of breath. It was not good for my health, let alone all the pain to my joints and all the stress that I put on my joints and all the potential damage that I may have done and may eventually have to deal with. I mean, she never wants to address that. She only ever talks about the social implication. And not just her. These movements in general, body positivity and fat acceptance, they never talk about health unless they're talking about mental health or how losing weight was terrible for their health because they went about it in clearly a terrible fashion. So I find it rather disingenuous that we're going to have all these discussions about weight, and we're going to talk about social implications, about finding clothing, about how people treat you, about all of these things, but we're not going to address the actual elephant in the room, which is what obesity will do to your body, especially prolonged obesity.
Why is being ugly the most important thing to avoid in this life? That's what we really have to ask ourselves, I think. Because I agree with you. Starving yourself to feel attractive for a few minutes before your body packs that weight on and makes you starving and makes you binge so that you pack that weight on faster, that's not viable. It doesn't work.
Well, she is right on one thing. It doesn't work because none of what she said right there is based in reality. None whatsoever. Nothing that she was talking about when it comes to weight loss or how your body responds to it is rooted in reality. It's all rooted in fat acceptance and body positivity reality. And in their reality, you can't change your body size. Your body's always going to fight you tooth and nail and throw you into starvation mode. But in actual reality, outside of fat acceptance and body positivity, your body is a reflection of your habits, what you're doing on a continual basis, how you eat, how you exercise. Your body will reflect that. And in actual reality, starvation mode is a total myth. And I mean, she did kind of give it away in that last little section right there. Let's play it back and see if you catch it.
I agree with you. Starving yourself to feel attractive for a few minutes before your body packs that weight on and makes you starving and makes you binge so that you pack that weight on faster.
Okay, did you catch that? If you starve yourself to feel attractive, your body will pack the weight back on, make you starving, which will make you binge, which will then put the weight on faster. That's not how any of that works. What happens in reality is, yes, if you restrict yourself too much, it is very common to then overindulge the next time you eat. And yeah, you can binge from that. But that is what causes the weight gain. The binging, the excess calories. That is what will always cause the weight gain. It's not the starvation. It's not feeling attractive. It's the binging. That's what will cause the weight gain. So if you don't get yourself into that cycle and you stick with a slight caloric deficit, you're not going to have any of those issues. At least I personally didn't run into those issues, and no one I know who has lost weight through this method has ever run into those issues either. I mean, it's almost as if she's ready to run right into the point like a brick wall. It's the binging that will cause you to put the weight on. It is the overconsumption of calories. That's what will cause you to put the weight on. And the speed at which you do that is going to be determined by the amount of surplus of your calories.
That's not viable. It doesn't work. So what are we going to do? We have no choice. We have to either believe that being fat is beautiful or just embrace being ugly. And I'm good with either. Let's go.
So there we have it. We can either accept being ugly or we can embrace that fat is beautiful. There's no other option. No other option whatsoever. You have to choose your fighter. And clearly I'm a figment of her imagination. And I mean, you can't lose weight because if you do, your body's either going to fight you or throw you in starvation mode, right? Again, I would love to see her say that to someone in person, to their face. Someone like myself, someone who has lost the weight and kept it off. I would also love to see her try to debate somebody who has actually lost the weight and kept it off. Because so much of what she just said right there is misinformation, a defeatist attitude, and, well, you're never going to succeed, so why even bother, right? And again, I'm just not really sure why I would ever want to take her advice on something she admits she was unsuccessful at, as opposed to myself or the countless individuals who have lost weight and kept it off. Not really sure why we would listen to her over anyone who is actually successful at this. But let me know in the comments down below. What do you think? I'm genuinely curious and I love reading all of your responses. That is where we will leave things today. I thank you so much for joining me. Please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will catch you all in the next one. Bye! Well, I guess this is my life now. I have a cat on my shoulder. And she does this to herself. She puts herself up here all the time. And that has no way of getting back down. Bye!